Hello, this is the Knowledge Catalog. And para sa video na to, we are going to discuss the different kinds of reforms in science education in the Southeast Asia region. Ang original title niyan actually is in the Philippines. Kaso, it is like a broader video now that we are going to talk about some other places that are in Southeast Asia, or as far as I know, are in Southeast Asia. So let's begin. So the first reform that we are going to talk about is on integration. Okay. Critics of science education during nung 60s and 70s found it to be dull, okay, to be overly academic, true, and fragmented. It was one of the most unpopular subjects among students, partly because of the way it was presented and because it generally had very little to do with their everyday experiences. The integrated science movement, strongly supported by organizations like UNESCO, was developed to make science more problem and society oriented, and thus, presumably more interesting and less intimidating to children. Kala ko teachers. Okay, so two kinds of integrations were advocated. That among sciences, para mawala yung fragmentation, ang ginawa sa science is tinanggal yung pagkaka-compartmentalize niya, yung pagkaka-fragment niya. So, pansinin nyo, dati, nung first year high school, it was integrated science. Second year high school, it was biology. Third year high school was chemistry. Fourth year high school was physics. It was too fragmented. It is treating science as these branches that are completely separate from each other when in fact they are not. Okay, so that is the first integration. Ginawa natin is first quarter, Earth and Space. Pangalawang quarter, pwedeng biology. Pangatlong quarter, pwedeng chemistry. Pangapat na quarter, the last one is physics, and that is going to happen in only one grade level so that the students are only going to understand or to feel they are doing science and not a fragmented version of it. Well, that kind of sequence is actually, it's actually, it may only appear to one grade level. You know what I mean? Like, pwedeng iba-iba yung, basta ang point doon sa isang grade level, hindi pwedeng isang branch of science lang. The next one is between science and social studies para ma-promote ang social relevance. Now, examples of this abound in Southeast Asia, such as in Malaysia. A phased primary school curriculum reform introduced in 1982 will present the pupils in primary a new course entitled Man and His Environment, an integration of various sciences and social studies. The main purpose of that course is to establish an appreciation of science in the modern world, a goal consistent with the recent regional UNESCO conference call for science education, which, above all, would establish and maintain a positive attitude towards science and technology. Malaysia also offers an integrated lower secondary science school course, which is social problem-oriented, emphasizing themes like environment pollution, energy conservation, and consumerism. In another country, in Thailand, the Royal Thai Government's Institute for the Promotion of Science and Technology, or IPST, has developed an integrated science approach for elementary schools which combines health education with science and social studies. For the lower secondary schools, IPST has developed an integrated science curriculum which emphasized the triangular relationships between energy, changes in matter, and the environment. So our first our first reform in science education is we have integrated it. We turned it into an integrative version. Okay, so ginawa natin is tinanggal natin yung fragmentation by putting in subjects that are, branches that are actually connected to each other or that have a basic level, pero you know what I mean. And then the next one is that we connected it to their environment, such as in tackling environmental issues, on pollution, on energy conservation, even consumerism. Okay, that's the first one. Next one is relevance. Advocates of indigenous curriculum reform have insisted that science must be presented in such a way that it is relevant to a country's need and resources. Kailangan kung ano yung meron sa isang place, kailangan ganun din ang mga contents ng science subjects. Now, the position has also been advanced that for science to be attractive and meaningful to most children, it must impinge on their daily life experiences and be geared to their level of cognitive development. Now, aside from those that call for relevance to national problems and content, there are those within nations that call for adaptations of local environments and conditions, particularly in nations like Indonesia and the Philippines, where there is a wide regional variation. The Philippines it is divided into so many islands. We are archipelagic. We have communities up the mountains and then near the shores. We are in a dire need of contextualizing science. Examples of this movement are perhaps most plentiful in the Philippines, where the official national curriculum states that science education must be connected to the needs of the country and development goals. The prestigious Science Education Center at the University of the Philippines, or UPSEC, has conducted numerous community surveys and made profiles of students and teachers in an effort to develop science learning modules with materials relevant to local problems, needs, and resources to supplement national textbooks. Perhaps the best single example of this is a joint UPSEC-UNICEF project called Survival of the Family, which started with a community needs assessment and ended with villagers experimenting with different types of traditional medicine and ways of salting fish. In Thailand, relevance to national problems and conditions is stressed in every part of the new national curriculum. For example, the course in biology is centered on the examination of biology in immediate environment of the learners. Moreover, the chemistry course at the same level puts special emphasis on the chemical industry of Thailand. So, for relevance, the main point of this is that this reform has turned science into something that a community is going to need and is going to recognize. We are connecting science to the actual people who are going to use it. We are not discussing things that they won't be able to relate or they are not even going to use. So the next one is on process skills. All the countries in the region are engaged in a movement to make science education more process skills oriented than it formerly was. This movement stresses a move away from a fixation on scientific knowledge towards an emphasis on inquiry skills and discovery learning. Such a focus, accomplished generally through active learning approaches such as doing experiments, going on field trips, observing natural phenomena, and discussing problems, is expected to produce in students great capacities for logical and hypothetical thinking, for data gathering and interpreting, and for problem solving. Indonesian science education developers have invested heavily in the process skills development movement, a primary science project in West Java being developed by the Indonesian Office of Educational Research and Development, with help from the British Council, has made process skills development its main objective. This it pursues by focusing on a limited number of scientific concepts which are presented through learner-centered activities, casing example, and simple equipment. This system, which is being developed as a prototype for national use, relies on intensive retraining programs using the school supervisor as a trainer. A secondary science program with a similar focus has already been disseminated nationwide. Although students at this level are still constrained to cover a discipline-oriented, overly dense curriculum, their learning activities are structured through the use of a series of worksheets, supplements to the textbooks, which call upon them to perform simple tasks and experiments. In our case in the Philippines, in science teaching, we are now having these kinds of activity sheets called learning activity sheets, which are going to supplement self-learning modules, which are in turn going to supplement naman the learning materials of the learners. In Thailand, the inquiry approach to science learning permeates the new IPST curricula. Intended to promote critical thinking and problem-solving skills, the new students' books place students in the role of the discoverer. This is true for science courses geared not only for those who are bound for higher education, but also for those in vocational tracks. For example, in the vocationally oriented upper secondary courses, special science courses have been created by the IPST, which stress science process skills geared towards problem solving on the job and towards situations in everyday life. For this part of the reforms, we turned science into from merely memorizing facts, from merely differentiating related terms, to something that involves movements, to something that involves more discoveries that is done independently by the learners. This is much like we are now making them do problem solving activities, problem solving tasks inside the classroom. The last one is going to be reforms on values orientation. A recent phenomenon related to the emphasis on linking science study to social problems is the concern of value-oriented science. This trend articulated recently by science educators at a regional meeting at the CMAO Regional Center for Education in Science and Mathematics, or REXAM, results from a concern for the abuses that sometimes accompany scientific and technological development. The meeting heard REXAM officers calling for science for a more humane and caring society and the promotion of global harmony. It also heard Singaporean educators call for humane rationality, and the Malaysian University Vice Chancellor called for more humility among scientists and more awe in approaching the wonders of God's universe. The conference ended by calling for a science education more related to the ethical concerns of man, placing greater emphasis on the social accountability of scientists and technologists and scientific discipline. It also highlighted a need for science to address the issues of drug abuse, energy conservation, consumerism, and environmental pollution. These reforms are now being done, or if not completed, in terms of the Southeast Asian science education.